Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm MLK Sharma. The US President Donald Trump has now ordered the declassification of all remaining classified records related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The move has been formalized through an executive order which also calls for the release of files concerning the assassinations of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The order highlights that over 50 years after the assassinations, the federal government has yet to release all relevant records. In the order, President Trump has highlighted that continued redaction and withholding information from records pertaining are not consistent with public interest. He has emphasized that the release of these records is long overdue, as a lot of people are waiting for this for a long time, for years and even for decades. The classification process is set to unfold swiftly. Now, as per the directive, the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General have 15 days to present the plan for the full release of John F. Kennedy related records and 45 days for the records of Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. Despite the directive, it remains unclear when the documents will actually be accessible to public. Let's start our conversation. Joining me on the telecast is Professor Madhav Nalapat. And Professor Nalapat, if we take a look at the details of what the executive order says and the statement that has been made by the National Archives Administration of United States of America. It says 97% of approximately 5 million pages in its collection in the assassination of John F. Kennedy have already been made public. So do you think this is just a stunt that is being pulled by Donald Trump, and why is he doing this?
Well, Megha, I don't think it's a stunt for a simple reason that he is already the president of the United States, and once he was sworn in as president, within minutes he could have asked for those files and checked them and found out exactly what was in them, and or maybe it was pointed out to him that these were sensitive parts that were kept out. So Donald Trump knows exactly what's in those files. It's no secret from him. He's the president of the United States. You can't keep secrets from the president. They tried to do that in Trump's first term. It's not going to happen in the second term. So from that point of view, obviously there are facts about the Kennedy assassination, the RFK assassination, and the Martin Luther King assassination that have been kept secret for very long because these are sensitive subjects. And why? Because don't forget, Megha, there's been a swirl. I mean, Lee Harvey Oswald is supposed to have killed him, a solo man acting on his own, just as the very young chap who was in broad daylight crawled up a roof and with a shotgun slung around his shoulder and took a shot at him. Oh, this is only a single person. Well, the fact of the matter is that there is also a theory that it was ordered by the then CIA top brass. Why? Because Kennedy was threatening to basically withdraw and reveal from details and withdraw from secrecy and reveal details about the Bay of Pig operation. And that operation involved the CIA. It was a disaster. So those documents probably contain records of that disaster. Robert F. Kennedy, let's be clear, he fought the mafia. He fought the mafia fiercely and sincerely. And the mafia hated him. And the mafia had a lot of power in the United States. So there's a theory that because of the attack on the mafia, then the question is who shot and who killed him, and whom did the mafia use? And again, you have a chap called Siran who comes from nowhere and disappears into nowhere. So very frankly, there's a lot of absolutely inconvenient questions about the assassinations.
Okay.
As the example about the assassination of Shastri. Martin Luther King, there's a very strong belief that it was ordered by then FBI Supremo Edgar Hoover, because Hoover thought that this Martin Luther King a really truly patriotic American who wanted justice for all. He was a Soviet agent. He was a KGB agent, a communist, and there is the speculation that whoever may have ordered the assassination, who has been the longest serving member, serving as the head of the FBI for life. So these are very interesting theories, and they'll be put to rest as soon as all these documents are released, Megha.
Okay, Gautam Mukherjee, I would like to understand from you, because President Trump is not the first president of America who has passed an executive order for the declassification of John F. Kennedy's files. Something similar was done by the Biden administration as well in 2022, where 97% of these documents had already been released. So even though these documents are in public domain, why are we still not able to understand and know, why have there not been any revelations made regarding the mysterious death of John F. Kennedy?
Well, Megha, there are 5 million pages of documents. And I think in the initial Warren Commission report, there was a great attempt to square a circle and come to a conclusion that would, in probably the opinion of the commission and the government that followed JFK, the two governments that followed JFK, because it went on for a fair amount of time, that it would bring peace and calm to and a form of closure by saying that there was a single sharpshooter who was sympathetic to the Soviet Union, had gone there, come back, was a Marine who did this. But there were lots of other documents which said that there were movements from the grassy knoll at that roundabout, and there were other evidence in terms of shots from the back, and including a theory that said that the fatal shot may have come from the back and not from the front. So this has gone on, and this is also in the documentation. There's a famous film by Oliver Stone in which all of this was discussed at length. It was a long film. RFK, similarly, here is a Palestinian or a Lebanese who kills him inside the interiors of the kitchen and the passages around the back, because the front was considered unsafe after his last speech. And there he was killed too. Who was behind it, what was behind it, has gone on. RFK Jr., who is now part of Trump's government, insists that it was a conspiracy, as it was in terms of his uncle JFK. And similar conspiracy theorists are on about Martin Luther King as well. Martin Luther King, if Edgar Hoover thought he was a communist, there were various others who considered him a great threat in terms of racial integration, which particularly in the South, and he was killed in the South, was anathema to a lot of white people, and it was a white killer who went to jail, for the actual shooting. So 3% of the papers have been finally released that had not been released before, but that is pertaining mainly to JFK. There's a cache of papers, no doubt, with regard to RFK, and another cache for the first time with regard to Martin Luther King. All these papers have been released. Trump has gone ahead and done it in full, without redactations, with nothing scratched out, nothing left out. So
Okay.
let us see what it actually says.
Okay, all right. Again, Adit, let's get you into the conversation as well. The fact that there have been declassification of the collection of documents when it comes to the conspiracy theories that are doing the rounds ever since the assassinations happened. It's been decades since the assassinations actually took place, and nothing really has come out of it. What are the chances that there is going to be a fair investigation and inquiry into it, and the truth will actually be revealed?
Well,
But a fair chance. Sorry, Gautam.
Sorry, please
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yes, this is for Adit.
Okay.
The fair chance of a investigation, I think, begs on the fact that here is a man who's been voted into power with immense majority and a mandate to basically reveal these these secrets and put those conspiracy theories to bed. So the mandate itself, makes sure it gives Donald Trump that power, and he's demonstrating it with the kind of activities that he's been engineering over the last few days. Goes to show that he's a man on the mission. He is he's in a hurry to basically please his electoral voters at the end of the day. So that for itself justifies all of the actions that are being taken, and the 3% documentation, like Gautam also pointed out, mostly relating to JFK murders, which were previously retracted at the behest of the CIA and FBI initially, which had basically pleaded to Donald Trump in his first term to not release those sensitive papers because they were sort of sensitive to national security matters. Donald Trump has it on his shoulders now. Enough is enough. We need to let the people know the actual truth, and which is why he's going ahead with this full plan of releasing these documents. But the other aspect to this, Megha, is also the fact that he is particularly not happy with how the CIA and the FBI have basically been conducted, how they've been run as institutions and organizations. His own assassination attempt, which is a big question mark to begin with. So there is a bit of that sort of a dehyphenation where he sees it important that he needs to ensure that these documents are released into the public domain so that future generations can be protected from the actions of the so-called deep state.
Okay.
So I think that's where we are going with this.
Okay.
Megha.
All right. Let me get in my fourth guest into conversation. Rohan Gunaratna on the telecast with me. Mr. Gunaratna, again, this seems like a futile exercise that every president that comes to power in America releases certain number of documents in the case, and then certain others are redacted, talking about quote-unquote national security, quote-unquote harm to military defense and intelligence operations, law enforcement, and so on and so forth. Let's be honest and make a fair assessment over here that release of these documents is going to hurt people at influential positions. So whether it is the Democrats or the Republicans, they would be wary of actually finding out and putting it out in public domain who were the killers of John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King. So I feel that this is an exercise in futility. This is just optics. This is to appease certain individuals within the government, certain individuals within the community and in America, and it wouldn't really amount to anything much.
The security and intelligence community of every state has the right to decide whether sensitive documents, either intelligence or other investigations, should be released to the public or not, and to what extent the content should be reviewed and redacted. In the case of Martin Luther King, the case of Robert F. Kennedy and John F. Kennedy, they all took place in the 1960s, that is 50 years ago. So usually the classification is for a generation, which is 20 to 30 years. So today, I personally believe that it will not harm American national security, and it is a good decision on the part of the president to release these documents, because there are so many conspiracy theories when there is an information vacuum, that space is filled with conspiracy theory. It's happening today more than ever before. And I think the decision of the president is right. The public has the right to know. It is in public interest. And those who have studied these cases will also share with you that there is no real threat to national security after a period of half a century of releasing these documents.
Professor Nalapat, do you believe that the governments, whether it was the Biden administration who released certain percentage of the documents, or the Trump administration in his first term and now in second term putting out an executive order, do you think this is just optics? You're doing it because I don't know what is the benefit that you will get. Are you looking for some sort of a thumbs up, some sort of a go ahead from certain communities, certain people, some certain officials in the intelligence and so on and so forth? And if it's been 50 long years that you have not been able to actually find out what exactly happened in the three leaders who were killed, what are the chances you will be able to do that? And do these governments even actually have that, do they actually even want that these cases be solved?
Look, I'd like to say that Trump's national security picks, CIA, the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, FBI, Kash Patel, they're all people who are, and Hegseth, the most important, the incoming Defense Secretary, these are all people who are committed to reforming the departments that they're going to head, which is why there's so much of opposition being created against them, and which is why people hope that they're all going to be
why was Trump not able to resolve this? Why wasn't Trump able to resolve it in his first term? Because he released those documents, and those documents were released as per his executive order. It was 4 years till he till he lost the elections. He was the president. Why could this case not be solved in the 4 years that he was president?
Megha, please look at the first term of President Trump. Look at the books capital of the Trump administration. How they systematically sabotaged what President Trump wanted to do. They have gone public on that. I mean, for example, John Bolton. You look at his memoirs. Look at the memoirs of so many other people. The first defense secretary, yes, confessed that yes, I wanted to sabotage this guy because he was all kinds of unsound things. His Secretary of State used to privately call Trump the most abusive words, and all this has become public. Why? Because these people thought Trump will never come back. They had no suspicion that he's ever going to come back. And that is why now the same kind of people who have got secrets to hide are trying to prevent the existing national security choice of Trump from coming back. In the case of John F. Kennedy, there's a very important point we should all understand. And that important point is he was becoming disillusioned with the Vietnam War. After the assassination of DM and so many other things, I mean, the records show that he was a bit shaken. And, he told his defense secretary and others. Now, I'm not linking that to what happened, but the fact of the matter is, Lyndon Johnson, who took over, certainly did a very good job in Social Security. He also did a very bad job in sending a record number of troops to Vietnam. And that was his Waterloo. He could not have a second term, a second consecutive term, which is entitled to as a president who got in because of the assassination of his predecessor. Why? Because he was so unpopular. And Richard Nixon was the peacemaker. He came on a slogan that he's going to have peace in Vietnam. And instead of peace, he pounded Laos and Cambodia also to pieces, along with North Vietnam. And of course, parts of South Vietnam. So quite frankly, let's be honest, the reality is these papers need to be released. I'm delighted that Trump is doing so. And anywhere in any part of the world, certainly in any democracy, the citizens have a right to know, because after all, they elect the leaders and they trust these leaders with running their lives. So certainly I agree with Dr. Gunaratna. They have a right to know, and I think Trump is going to get his wish, and we are finally going to get all fake theories,
Okay.
including possibly theories about, about which are official. For example, the origins of COVID. The Robert F. Kennedy was wanting to investigate that. He wanted to investigate the efficacy and after effects of vaccines.
Yeah.
And that is why very powerful groups are opposing him. In my view, full transparency will benefit the United States of America.
Gautam Mukherjee, let's draw parallels to the mysterious deaths and assassinations that have happened here in India in the past decades. Whether we talk about Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Lal Bahadur Shastri, or Rajesh Pilot, we've still not been able to decipher the motive behind their deaths, the mysterious deaths. We've still not been able to find out who were the people, the organizations that were behind their deaths. Do you think truth can ever come out?
Well, the smoking gun is the one that is usually blamed. So in other words, if you look at in very recent terms, the RG Kar hospital murder, the public believes there are a whole bunch of people involved. But the court has decided only one rapist was involved and he committed the murder. And they even decided it wasn't such a heinous crime after all. So he's been given life imprisonment, and it's going to be appealed to the Supreme Court. So in these high-profile political, deaths, there are, Rajiv Gandhi's murder. They caught all the people who were directly involved. In fact, the person who was most directly involved died with him. But they caught the core conspirators who had come to India from Sri Lanka and so on. But what about all the shadowy politicians who helped them?
Yeah.
Who are still operating? If they're alive, they're still operating. It's the same with Lal Bahadur Shastri. There were a lot of beneficiaries because he died in such an untimely manner. So again and again and again, you're going to get a basic squaring of the circle, like I said, where you catch the last guy in the line and say, well, this is the only person responsible. Let's close the file, QED, it's over. But it isn't over in the public eye because of this kind of squaring of the circle and the near impossibility of finding people who have motivated other people, who have motivated yet another set of people. So it becomes a very, very difficult sort of circumstance to prove. So you can only have whispers, you can only have conspiracy theories, and they are valid. They are valid. They're not to be dismissed just because you can't prove them.
Rohan Gunaratna, then, quickly a concluding remark from you. What are the chances, should we be hopeful that by the end of President Donald Trump's term, we would actually be able to know who the assassinator of John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. was?
I believe that the release of these files is the first step for there to be a consensus of who did what and when. I also believe that it is in the interest of the public that these documents should be released because the public have the right to know, especially of assassination of such iconic figures. They are all figures that rule the United States or influence the United States. One was Attorney General who was going to run for presidency. The other was a president. Other was a major civil rights activist who influenced not only the United States but the world. So in the interest of the public, the right decision has been made, but this is only the first step, because the investigations, some of the investigations may be partial, may not be complete. So there may not be all the answers. But after so many years, people are willing to tell the truth. So I also believe that the timing of the release of these documents is right, and it will lead to significant debate and discussion in the United States.
Okay, all right. On that note, I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast, and thanks for watching NewsX.